All right, hello and welcome to ISKL Alumni's very first Future Ready Alumni Black Box Conversations. I'm Hezril Azyraaf, ISKL alum of the class of 2013, and now presenter-producer of the evening edition at Malaysia's business radio station, BFM 89.9. So each episode of Future Ready Alumni Black Box Conversations will explore a different study and career pathway. Our ISKL alumni panel will give their insights into what it's like to study or work in the field, as well as share handy tips for students as they make their university choices. And today we're delving into medical sciences. It's my pleasure to first of all introduce our panel of three wonderful alumni. First off, to my right, we have Dr. Hana Aziz, class of 98. She's a general practitioner at the Malaysia Social Research Institute Clinic in Ampang, providing care to the refugee community registered with the UNHCR. Hana earned her medical degree from the Asian Institute of Medicine, Science and Technology, and is currently studying for a master's in public health. She started her medical career as an emergency doctor and has also worked as a health screening doctor at a major private hospital. Welcome, Hana. It's a pleasure to have you. To my left is Dr. Elena Azizan. She's a research lecturer at University Kebangsaan Malaysia Medical Center. She's recently received a major grant for COVID-19 research related to her field. Elena was an IB scholar who went on to receive a Bachelor of Pharmacology at Leeds University, then a postgraduate degree in clinical pharmacology at the University of Cambridge. Welcome, Elena. And last but certainly not least, we have Yu Ern Hsueh, who is in her third and final year of a Bachelor of Genetics at Queen Mary University of London, a class of 2017 alumna. Yu Ern plans to pursue further studies towards a medical career after completing her bachelor's degree. Welcome, Yu Ern, and welcome everyone here. It's a pleasure to have you. Okay, so first things first, the 10th grade students in our audience, and no doubt everyone watching, are wondering how you all got to where you are today, whether it was a direct and bump-free path, or if you navigated some challenges and did face some bumps. Let's start off first with Hana. Did you always want to be a medical doctor, and why or why not?
Actually, I didn't really know what I wanted to be. Even after I graduated, I was still kind of thinking, like, can I be a doctor or not? But throughout my school years, I had a lot of role models, and there were a lot of seniors that graduated and went to medical school, and when they came back, they would talk to us about it. And so I had all those role models, and I also had a lot of TV shows at that time, and you have TV shows now too about all the medical doctors, like what's that?
Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, Grey's Anatomy. So during my time there was ER. So it was always something so interesting and so intriguing. But even after I graduated, I was still figuring out what to do, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. But I managed to get into medical school, and yeah, that's how it started.
Right, and like many students today, you finished school at a challenging time for our country, Malaysia. There was an economic slump at the end of the 90s. And so how did this affect your choice to go to university?
Yeah, it affected me a lot because when I was a senior, so I was applying to all the universities in the United States and also in the UK. And that was a time when they had the economic slump, and I couldn't go overseas because it was just really expensive. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it was a really slow start for me after high school, because I had to change my thinking and start to think that, okay, I have to stay back and I have to look for colleges here in Malaysia. And it was also the transition from an American high school to a more local setting. So that was very challenging for me.
And would you say that if you have the will, that there's a way to achieve what you want to achieve?
Well, yeah, because after I graduated, so I graduated in '98, and it was only when I was when I was 24 years old, that's when I went into medical school. So all that time, I was looking for ways to get into medical school. So I would go into different colleges, and I would ask, like, how do I do this? And I was working part-time, so I was studying and working, and there were so many obstacles. I mean, at that time, I felt like maybe this is not the right thing for me to do. But then I was so lucky that I found a newspaper article about a university, and it was all the way up north, and I haven't even heard of the place. So I thought, okay, I'll just go take a look, and I called them up, and then they're like, yeah, why don't you come? So then I was one of the oldest students. I was 24 years old, and everybody else was like around 20, 19 years old. But it's okay. I mean, it was all right, because by the time we graduated, and they weren't calling me like big sister or anything, but you know, once we graduated, we're all the same. Yeah, it's really never too late.
Right. And Elena, so you grew up in a house with both a medical doctor and a scientific researcher for parents. How did that affect your choice to pursue your field?
Well, I think it's in school, the people who get good grades tend to go for medical school. So they say, I'm going to be a doctor. And that's what happened with me. I got good grades, so I'm going to apply for a doctor. And my mom's a doctor. But then after I SPM and during IB afterwards, I actually did an attachment in Hospital and I made the choice of doing an attachment with leukemia pediatric. And it sort of broke my heart. And I knew then that I was not made for being a doctor. So then I saw my dad, who's a scientist. So I changed path.
Right. And did you have, so you clearly switched. Did you have a long-term goal from the beginning? Or, how did that shift along once you did know that you wanted to head towards the more research side of things?
Yeah, so I actually had a scholarship for medicine. So it was a big switch for me because I had to do all the paperwork to change my scholarship from a medical degree to actually what I ended up doing, which was pharmacology. And it was actually very, I would say, very fluid how I came to pharmacology, and it was all by chance, really. Because actually, I would say I'm the only sponsored student for pharmacology because they don't do that. The JPA doesn't do that.
It looks like the stars aligned then. So Yu Ern, you're not really that long out of high school. You actually graduated when I graduated from university, from ISKL. Did you recall your decision-making progress when you were choosing your subjects for the IB? Did you have to make some tough choices, perhaps?
Yeah, actually, in the beginning, when I was in 10th grade, I actually wanted to do HL art because I knew, that's what I enjoyed doing. But for my sort of future aspirations and thinking about what I wanted to do as my career, which is pretty much in the medical sciences, I was pretty adamant about that from an early age. So because of that, I decided to drop art and do HL chemistry. Was it a good decision? Yes, but it was not an easy one because it was very hard.
Right. All right. So you had to make some sacrifices there.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, so it was a tough decision.
Yeah.
Did you perhaps find ways to stay connected to your interest for art, even though you had to drop that class and take up HL chemistry?
Yeah, of course. I tried to, apply for photography classes and do things that were, outside of science because, I think it's really important to keep your hobby going, even though, you're trying to pursue your career.
There we go. As we're now going to move into really zoom in on their careers, and as Hannah said, it's easy to take a romantic view perhaps of what a profession is based on what you see in the TV or movies, in shows like Grey's Anatomy or ER. But what is the work of a doctor or a medical researcher really like, and what sort of personalities are most suited to these professions? So this is what we want to delve into next. And it looks like we do have a student question from the audience from Milu, who is one of our 10th graders. Milu, what's on your mind?
You Ern, as a student of genetics, what does the average week consist of? Are you in lecture theaters or online classes or in labs?
Well, due to COVID now, most of my lectures will be online. But before, sort of my every day and weekly routine was I would have classes sometimes 3 days out of the week or 4, depending on my labs. And what's great about pursuing sciences is that you get to do a lot of lab work other than just attending lectures. So you get to do a lot of hands-on activities, and you also get to sort of, work with a lot of machines and use like pipetting and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Milu, thanks so much for your question. And Yu Ern, I guess as a follow-up to that, what was your favorite part of your studies, and perhaps what was least appealing to you?
I'd say the favorite part of studying genetics, my favorite part of studying genetics is definitely, like I said before, the labs, because you just learn so much, and you get to interact with your friends that you made on the course, and you sort of get to work together and sort of delve into your course a bit more. But I'd say the less appealing part of it is that sometimes, as you guys might know, studying a science, it's not always the most fun at times, and there can be a lot of bumps along the road. So I'd say, like, if you're willing to stick through it and be sort of happy about your outcome, I think then it's worth it.
Doctors, did you find that as well? Did you like lab work or spending, your time on more hands-on activities?
Well, we had cadavers, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, right. You can't really go. You can't really get more exciting than cadavers, can you?
Yeah, I mean, like in school, it was rats and frogs, right? And so in medical school, you get to see cadavers, and of course, the first few minutes, you'll be like, oh my God, I don't want to go near it. But then after that, you've got like his brain in your hand. And so, yeah, it's, I think the studying process, it's tough, but it can be a lot of fun and a lot of stories to tell your family and your friends.
Did you find that as well, Elena?
Yeah, I mean, we also had cadavers, and I remember one time in a room we had 16 cadavers at the back, and you had the computer in the front, and you kept on turning your head, making sure they didn't move. But I wanted to follow up about the learning in the lab and stuff. You do tend to be sometimes in science alone, and you have to be very strict with yourself and persevere, because you do have down days. You have down days and you have up days, but you just persevere, and you know you're going to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a good perspective to offer. Now, Hannah, you've worked in 3 quite distinct areas of medicine. Firstly, the emergency department. Then you worked in a screening clinic, and you're now a general practitioner. Which one was the most? Which one provided the most surprises to you, and why?
I guess the first one, the emergency department, was very surprising, because I had this image of me, like, treating one patient one at a time and be like, how am I going to do this? But it doesn't work like that. They don't come in one at a time. They come in like 3 or 4 at a time. And I think that was the most difficult part, just that part, the stress of it all. And I think, like you were saying, we're like before we go into medical school or before we become a doctor, we're like romanticizing about how it is becoming a doctor. And it's totally not like that. I think it's even better, you know? And so that was my emergency experience.
And was that the most challenging out of the three, or were there other? Yeah, were there
No,
other challenges?
it was physically more challenging when I was working in the emergency department because you would have to do like double shifts. So you would work in the morning and you go home at rest, and then you come back again in the middle of the night until the next day. And that was just, it was really not good for my health. But now I'm working in a GP. It has a different challenge. It was more of a mental strain because although we are treating them one by one, but the problems are just so deep and so heavy. And it wasn't just a medical problem, it was social issues and the economy and the government. So that one person, it was just so difficult for you, but it was very satisfying.
Would you say that's the most rewarding out of the three, being a general practitioner and engaging with refugees now?
Yeah, I think it was. I feel like I finally found what I really enjoy. There were times when I was in emergency and I was like, no, I don't want to see patients anymore. I'm going to become, I'm going to go into research. I don't want to see any patients. But then now I feel like, hey, this is what I'm meant to do. And this is where I belong. So, and it took me like 10, 11 years to figure that out.
Right, and Elena, to shift to your work, you're working with DNA sequencing to assess, you might have to help me, it's angiotensin converting enzyme 2, or ACE2, expression in the infectivity and severity of COVID-19. So that's quite a mouthful. Did I get that right?
Yes, yes.
All right, so tell us exactly what this looks like, as a job. What does a typical day entail for you?
Well, my friends and family always do ask me, what do I do? And I struggle to answer, actually. So that is actually just one of my research ongoing projects that actually just started because of COVID. I'm actually more interested in primary aldosteronism. So that, if for people who want to know, it's an adrenal above your kidney, and you secrete a lot of hormones called aldosterone, and therefore you become hypertensive. And hypertension is very, very virulent among our society. But day to day, what does it entail? I'm also a lecturer, so I do still do teaching for medical students, and I also do teaching for pharmacology students and for emergency department students. So I do teaching also, but research-wise, I think I'm most comfortable in the lab, mostly in my cell culture lab, where you just hear the blower and it's just blowing at you because you have to be sterile and everything. So it's really a mix. You have to wear many hats. You have to do admin, you have to do routine, you have to do research. Yeah.
And talking about your research, it seems very cutting edge, but is there already something more advanced being developed with regard to whether it's COVID or the other projects you're working on? And I guess I'm just curious as to how fast is the pace when it comes to medical research, when it comes to discovering new things?
Well, in 2003, the Human Genome Project came out. That was 13 years of research they were supposed to aim for 2000, but it ended up 2003. Now it's just becoming even more fast-paced. I'm sure some in the students have heard about circle DNA or ancestry.my or something like that, where you can actually send your blood and I'm Irish or whatever, suddenly you have a whole history background of where you're from. So definitely it's exponential.
Right, and to follow up on that, actually, we've actually got a question from our grade 10 audience, a question from Amelia. Amelia, what's on your mind?
Dr. Elena, did any of your colleagues end up quitting your course at the university, and why?
So they didn't quit. I know of one who actually, so she was same as me in University of Leeds. She did pharmacology and she finished, but then she didn't finish. She wanted to become a medical student. So she went back at the same university to then become a medical student. So she was like Dr. Hana, one of the oldest students, and I respect her for that. Whether there were anyone else who quit, not that I know of, but I would say don't quit, change, move forward. Don't quit. You can always use whatever you have in the past to bring yourself forward. So it's not about quitting. If you feel that it's not for you, the course or the study that you're doing, have a change and work towards bringing that change about. Yeah.
Can
to
I
that-
just
yeah,
add
yeah,
something?
Please, yeah.
So about quitting, I think what Dr. Lena was saying, I did have a few friends who, I mean, you could say they quit, but I think it's okay because you go into, I mean, you don't know how it is to go into medical school. We don't know how stressful it can be. So once you go into it, it's okay to realize maybe this is not what you should be doing. So I think it's okay to, I mean, I don't think you should call it quitting, but like Dr. Lena said, maybe you can adjust a bit and do something that you're more interested in because you don't want to stay in a course where you know you're not going to be happy. But you should always try, you know. You don't just at any sign of difficulty think that no, this is not right for me. Maybe it's just like that small bump that you have to go through.
Right, and I think it really speaks to how our career paths evolve, right? And that it's a matter of perhaps navigating and adjusting to the bumps we might face on the road. And to follow up, Yu Ern, you know, how do you see yourself moving forward with your own career? Do you think that when it comes to fundamentals versus applied science, that there's certain personality types that fit into perhaps certain molds?
Yeah, for sure. I think for sort of going into medicine, I think a lot of times people who want to do it, you need to realize that it's because you like working with people. And I think when studying this course, it's a lot of lab work. And a lot of times I realized that sort of going into it, although I do enjoy lab work, I find that I miss working with people and just being around them all the time and also having that conversation with patients. I really enjoyed that and their families because when you go into this field, you sort of realize that people are a lot more complicated than they first seem. And sometimes that's really interesting because you meet all sorts of people. And if you enjoy that, then that's definitely like sort of the job for you. But if you sort of prefer to be, more sort of focused on your work, then I think research is also really good for you as well. It's like Elena and Hannah previously said, it's sort of about, because sometimes I feel like medicine can be glamorized in a sense, and sciences can be very glamorized, especially on social media or TV shows. And it's important to realize that, a lot of times it's not as, you will have your off days and you sort of have to just persevere. And if you feel like you have that personality and you can do that and you can have like that grind, then it's good.
Right, and I think it's very important to point out those how different personalities do fit into those molds and the nature of their work. So do you see yourself moving then, engaging with more patients, or do you see yourself balancing that with with lab work as well? Moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward, I feel like I enjoy the patient aspect a lot more. So I definitely haven't completely sort of canceled out doing research because I think the great thing about studying sciences is that you actually have so many open doors and so many opportunities. And that's really great because you realize that not only can you go into medicine, but you can apply for really big pharmaceutical companies such as, AstraZeneca, which is right now developing the vaccine for COVID with Oxford University, and you can work with sort of companies like Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, if you guys have heard of it. And I think that's so great because, you just realize coming into it, like, you have so many open doors, and you can always use your sort of past experiences to push you in even further. So, yeah.
Right, and I think to wrap up this segment, we'll go to you, Hannah, on this. What gives you a sense of fulfillment when it comes to your job?
I love that my patients come in and they ask me how my kids are doing, and I love to see the kids grow up. I love coming into work and helping somebody with a problem that they've been having for years, and then I don't consider you're not like their savior or anything, but you were part of their life. I think that's the most fulfilling part of my job.
Right, and with that, we're now moving into our last segment, really the future and looking ahead at your fields and your careers. And Hannah, you mentioned about something about being a savior, and I think that when it comes to AI and robotics and the possibilities they provide for the scientific field, there's some association in terms of what they could do to help save human life. Could AI or a robot replace you, Hannah?
No way. No. You see a lot of apps nowadays, and you just key in your symptoms, and they'll say, okay, well, you've got COVID or something like that. But there's so much you can tell your phone, and you need that human touch, that human comfort. Recently, we've started video conferencing, and although it's a good step, but there is that you just need that person to be there also to give that extra comfort, especially when you're giving some bad news or good news.
Yeah, I can't imagine a robot giving me bad news ever. But that's on the human front, right? And that's interacting with patients. And on your end, Elena, you're very much into big data and research. Could AI fill in those roles when it comes to research and processing data one day? Why or why not?
So I think AI is more of giving us an opportunity. It's not taking it away from us. So it's actually allowing us to actually delve into big data, which humans wouldn't be able to do it in the time. As I said, Human Genome Project took 13 years. Now you can just send it off and you get your whole DNA ready. So I think it's opening different doors. It's very exciting times. We have next generation sequencing, whole genome sequencing. What we know about our genetics, genes, for example, is the thing that makes your protein. That's only 3% of your DNA. What the hell are the other 97% doing?
Yeah.
We don't know. It's called junk DNA, but it's not junk. So it is opening an opportunity. All this AI software, high-tech instrument, cutting-edge instruments, opening an opportunity for us humans to then make sense of it.
Right. So you've touched on some of the growth when it comes to genetic sequencing. What about job growth? What's the growth like when it comes to the job market for researchers moving forward?
Definitely, because now with prescription medicine also, where we can actually tailor whether you will respond to a drug or something based on your genetic makeup. So therefore, there's a lot of jobs right now, and but from the pharmaceutical company side, they have only a few eggs in the basket, so to speak. At the moment, they're cash cows, but I think for the future, with prescription medicine and also with genetics, there is definitely a lot of job availability there in this field.
Right, and Yu Ern, to end this segment and really wrap up our conversation, as a student, what did you have to do to ensure that you were selected for those research positions? And I guess just taking it a step back.
For research positions, you sort of have to make sure that, like, when you go into university, you need to realize that a lot of the opportunities is what you make for yourself. So you have to put yourself out there. You have to put your foot forward. And a lot of times, you know, you go in and lectures are filled up with like 200 students, 300, and so much more. You don't really have that like close relationship with your teacher anymore. So a lot of times, if you want a research position, you have to, you know, get acquainted with your professor. You have to be the one to make sure that they remember who you are and that you have a very sort of like, you're just like easy to recognize, you know, whenever you go, and you make sure you need to have a presence, because if, you know, you're just another person that comes in and out of lectures, then you're never really gonna get those opportunities. So not to say like to be a shark, but you kind of have to, you know, because you make your own opportunities outside of high school.
Right, and last question, you know, what have you learned about yourself in this journey and about where your opportunities lie?
So what I've learned about myself is basically that you really have to, like I said before, just sort of, a lot of the decisions you make coming out of high school are decisions that come with consequences. So sometimes you don't have to know exactly what it is that you want, but it's good to have an idea and just follow that. And sometimes just setting those small goals and small victories for yourself, it really makes a huge impact in the span of things, like in your future. And I've just learned that, you know, you just, like, you're not gonna, like, to be completely honest, you're not gonna enjoy every moment of a course. Like, there's never gonna be one course that you're gonna, you know, be completely in love with at all times. And if you can deal with that, just know that you have to push yourself and that there are tough times, then I think you can definitely, you know, make it. And sort of recognizing that quality in myself, I never knew that I had that perseverance, but after being in this course, I've realized that, you know, it's really helped me along the lines, yeah, giving me direction.
Yeah, and I think on that note, the world of medicine and medical science certainly seems to be rapidly evolving and opening up a range of fascinating and very highly valued career paths. I'd just like to take this moment to again thank our ISKL alumni guests. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Hana Aziz, Dr. Elena Azizan, and of course, Yu Ern Hsueh. I'm Hezril Azyraaf. Thanks again for joining us for Future Ready ISKL Alumni Black Box Conversations. Thank you so much, everyone.